Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I am so happy you've joined me for part 2 of my story tonight. And if you leave a comment, I will be so over the moon about that because it really makes a huge difference to the algorithms. It's crazy, but it really does. I mean, it's incredible. You could write so many negative reports on a program and say, I hate this, I loathe this, I can't stand this, this is the most terrible story I've ever heard. And guess what? The algorithms are going to think that your negative comments meant that you just love the story and you'll be being exposed to it, because that's how the algorithms work. They don't know the difference between good or bad. If you leave a comment, they just consider it great. So if you do that for me, I'll be so grateful. And let's continue with our story. One day when I was casually ambling down a street in New York, minding my own business and not paying much attention to anything in particular, that was when my eyes strayed from staring from the street ahead of me towards the mannequin in a boutique window, sporting a stunning bright red dress. I remember looking at it and thinking it was the most beautiful dress I had ever beheld. I was bewitched by this dress, as if locked under a mesmerizing witch's spell that had turned the dress into something irresistible. It quite literally took my breath away. I could feel my heart fluttering excitedly in my chest, like moths flapping around a light bulb, as a longing to own this dress overcame me. I'd never been remotely materialistic, or even very influenced by fashion trends of any kind, but this unique dress in the boutique window seemed to beckon to me, as if it was calling my name, and whispering into my ears tauntingly, Go on, you know you want to. You want to own me, don't you? You can't resist. Of course you want to take me home with you. Imagine how beautiful you would look if you were to put me on. My indignant mind was shouting back angrily at the dress to leave me the hell alone, but visions of the exquisite dress and its silky, sensuous fabric seeped into my mind unapologetically, like the leaking rainwater in a damaged roof. I could imagine the smooth, silky feel of the luxuriously extravagant fabric against my skin, envisage what it would look like against my long dark hair and fair complexion. I'd feel $1 million in a dress like this, as this dress could turn an ugly toad into a princess without the intervention of a fairy godmother. I knew I daren't go into the French chiffon boutique. I couldn't trust myself not to break the bank buying a dress like that. I knew that the price for that designer creation would be more than I could afford to pay. So I avoided going into that boutique, but unfortunately for 4 days in a row, I walked past that red dress in the window, and every time I stared at it in wondrous awe. The dress would make my heart thunder in my chest. My mind would wage war with my resolve and self-control, and it was all beginning to weaken. Who knew that a simple piece of fabric could turn me into a quivering lump of jelly? This was ridiculously insane, but I couldn't help myself. I was completely beguiled, as if the dress had some kind of powerful hold over me. It was on the 5th day, as I stared at that dress longingly in the boutique window, a deep yearning came over me. I told myself, what harm could it do just to have a look at it? I would only be looking after all. Nothing more than that. There were a few people in the boutique sifting through the fashionable merchandise on display, and every dress in that boutique was nothing short of stunning and individualistic. The clothes were stylish, slinky but quirky, with a bohemian twist that gave them an unusual edge. The owner appeared to be busy serving customers, ringing up purchases, placing them in cream and gold cardboard bags with the logo on it which read the French chiffon. The owner of the boutique looked like a Barbie doll herself. Long, thin legs, blonde hair, and so much exaggerated rouge on her cheeks, along with long eyelashes that would make a spider's legs look short. She nodded at me and told me she would be with me in a moment, but her gaze skimmed over my unfashionable attire with a suppressed snigger. She was probably thinking I did not belong in a high-end boutique like this, and she was right. This was the kind of boutique that demanded deep pockets, and deep pockets I did not have. I bustled over to the hangars where a few of these ravishing exclusive red designer creations were lined up in a neat row, and one of them was in my size. Now it really was calling out my name, with trumpets blasting and blowing through the skies of my imagination. I glanced at the price tag and inwardly groaned. This dress was furiously expensive. Never in a million months of Sundays could I ever afford it. There was no way. I could see another woman sifting through some dresses opposite me. She was slender, wearing very expensive jeans, very unlike my own, a designer jacket, and a rather nifty pair of cowboy boots. Her hair was swept away from her face in a long ponytail. I decided she was probably in her early 40s. She eyed me kindly through her bright brown eyes that flickered over me and the dress I was holding in my hand. "That dress is absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?" she said approvingly. "You've got very good taste, sugar. I saw it on the mannequin in the window. I'd love to wear a dress like that myself, but for some reason red never looks good on me. It makes me feel very conspicuous. I think with your dark hair it would look extraordinary on you. You should try it on. Let's just say that dress is one of a kind." "You're probably right," I said, giving her a warm smile. "That's why it caught my eye, I guess." "Probably right," she laughed. "Sugar, I'm always right. I'm rarely wrong about anything, and I've got an eye for things, you know." I did not even need any further encouragement, and hurried into the dressing room to try on the dress, which was a dreadful mistake on my part. The dress gave me curves where curves were meant to be. It gave me a figure that I did not even possess, the kind of hourglass look that I longed to have. I stared at myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the beautiful woman staring back at me. That is not me, I thought, peering at myself in the mirror. The dress seemed to transform my appearance, like waving a wand over a grey peahen, turning it into a ravishing peacock. I told you the dress was bewitched. If I walked into a room wearing a dress like this, every eye would be on me. Now my heart was so heavy, when I regretfully replaced the dress onto the hanger to put it back on the rail. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. What the hell was I doing trying on a dress that I could not afford? Now I was going to have a broken heart walking away from it. What a fool I'd been. "Not any good?" the woman had asked me, when she watched me hanging the red dress back on the rail. I pulled a face. "No, doesn't fit me very well, I'm afraid," I lied. There was something not very palatable about saying, "It's beautiful, but I can't possibly afford it." I mean, I did have my pride. "You do surprise me, sugar," she said. "I'd have thought that would look absolutely wonderful on you, with your lovely figure and porcelain complexion." She genuinely seemed disappointed. She shrugged her shoulders and said, "Well, you win some and lose some, don't you? It's always the way with dresses, you know. I find sometimes something on the hanger looks magnificent, and then when you put it on, well, it looks like a train smash. Never mind, sugar. Next time you'll have better luck, I'm sure." I nodded gratefully, giving her a watery smile. Every part of me was crying, "Get the dress! Get the dress! Get the dress!" A little voice boomed into my head. "You know you want it! You know you want it!" The lovely woman walked away to look at some designer purses on a stand, occasionally looking up at me, flashing me an encouraging smile. My fingers fingered the red dress. I stared at it again, and in that moment I knew I had to have it. I glanced around at the boutique furtively. Was anyone looking? Could I get away with stuffing the dress into my purse and walking out? Everybody appeared busy, and in a moment of brazen stupidity that I would always regret, I grabbed the dress as fast as I could, stuffing it into my purse on impulse, and with my heart thundering a dime to a dozen, I hastily began to march towards the door of the boutique, holding my breath, my heart thundering violently in my chest like a frightened bird. My worst fears were confirmed when the security guard with a walrus moustache and brown ferret-like eyes pulled me over. "Ma'am," he said, stiffening, "I'd like you to open up your purse for me. I need you to walk over to the counter. I think you've got something in there that does not belong to you." My face went crimson. My skin heated up several temperatures as my cheeks burned. My knees buckled beneath me. I wanted to run away as fast as I could. Get the hell out of this shop. but I was frozen to the spot, my mouth opening and closing like a goldfish. The security guard beckoned me over to the counter, where the owner of the shop was dealing with a customer's transaction. Then, with his puffed-up sense of importance and his inflated smugness, he prized open my purse, pulling out the red dress, so that all eyes in the shop were now pinned on me. The silence of the shoppers left me feeling as conspicuous as a goldfish in a bowl. I even heard one woman chattering under her breath something about, "All thieves, they need locking up. They need locking up." I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I felt as if I was dying in my humiliation. I don't think I recall a time that I felt more ashamed. I knew what I had done was very wrong.
"Ma'am, can you explain to me what this dress was doing in your purse?"
he asked me, his eyes burrowing into me. He pulled the sulky dress out, unfolding it out onto the counter. I don't know how it got there," I stammered, trying to act as if I was surprised as him to discover the red dress in my bag. The Barbie doll boutique owner was a very glamorous woman, gave me a vile look through her highly made-up eyes. She pointed her manicured finger at me.
"How dare you steal from my boutique? Rob it! Call the police at once! This little gutter rat is not going to get away with this. It's disgusting to steal."
She growled at me furiously. Tears began to spill down my cheeks, which I hurriedly wiped away. I didn't want to be even more humiliated than I already was. Oh my God, what had I done? How could I be so insanely stupid? I was now going to be arrested. I could end up with a police record and a blight to my character that would surely mean future employees would turn their nose up in employing me. No one in their right mind would want to hire a thief. And today, that is what I had become.
"People like you," she said, wagging her finger indignantly, "need locking up for good and throwing away the key. We have to put our prices up in our boutiques to cover missing merchandise, you know, caused by selfish, inconsiderate people like yourself. You're going to pay for this, my dear."
"I'm so sorry. I really am. I don't know how it happened. I wasn't thinking."
"Try telling that to the police, young lady. They're not going to believe a word of what you have to say. They're very well acquainted with people like you, who steal for a living. I knew the moment you entered my boutique you were trouble. You don't belong in an upmarket place like this. You're going to pay for what you've done. You're going to be charged."
"What is going on here, Rona?" came the sweet, honeyed voice of the woman whom had encouraged me to try on the dress earlier. Her eyes flickered from me to the security guard and the boutique owner, and then to the red dress in the security guard's hands, and I think she quickly discerned what had happened.
"Rob it!" said the boutique owner. "For God's sake, what on earth is wrong with you? Don't just stand there like a gormless, great big blundering idiot. What are you waiting for? Call the police, for goodness sake. This woman needs to be arrested and charged. I'm going to lay criminal charges against her." "Oh, I wouldn't be calling the police if I were you. There must be some dreadful mistake here," Rona said the woman. "I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding," she said, pulling out her credit card from her wallet and thrusting it into the boutique owner's hand. She pointed to me. "This is my daughter," she explained. "She was in a tearing hurry. I told her to stuff the dress in her purse and to just go. I was about to pay for it, settle it on my account. I thought I mentioned it to you, Rona. My daughter would be picking out a dress, and that I'd settle it with you at the counter." I stared incredulously at this kind stranger, paying for my red dress with her credit card, an act of random kindness like I'd never ever seen before. I have never encountered a person like this. She looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, go." She waved her hand and gave me a wink. "Take the dress with you. I'm paying for it. These people cannot arrest you for my blunders. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I forgot to tell them you were taking the dress with you." "Oh, Yvonne," said the owner of the boutique, "you must forgive me. I had no idea this lovely lady here was your daughter," she said, plastering on her face a very counterfeit smile. Moments before she'd called me a gutter rat and a fish out of water in her illustrious boutique. Now it would seem she was laying on the charm like thick butter over a slice of bread. But there was nothing sincere about this woman. She was greedily taking her customer's credit card and ringing up the dress. "Yvonne, I do apologize for jumping to the wrong conclusion. Goodness gracious me. In fact, I'm quite sure you did mention something about your daughter in the red dress, but I wasn't paying much attention," she lied. "I was busy serving my customers and was so distracted. You must accept my profound apologies." "Not to worry, Rona. Mistakes happen," said Yvonne. "But just so you know, my daughter is no thief, and I don't want her to be accused of being such a thing." "Of course your daughter's not a thief, Yvonne. Oh, no, of course not." She was now glaring at the security guard contemptuously. "Honestly, Robert, what is your problem? Falsely accusing Yvonne's daughter of stealing a red dress? You should be utterly ashamed of yourself. I don't pay you to pounce on my faithful customers who support me by shopping with me. Yvonne has been shopping with me for years. You should have known better, Robert." "Sorry, ma'am. I apologize for the misunderstanding," said the security guard, resuming his place by the door, looking bashful and somewhat befuddled by the uncharacteristic turn of events. One could almost feel sorry for him, if he wasn't such a self-satisfied prat, that is. "Now off you go, sugar," said Yvonne, looking at me with a warm smile, giving me a gentle nudge. "I'll settle the dress for you. Now you go, and you don't need to worry about anything. Everything's sorted out fine." Thank you so much. I don't know what to say." "Goodness gracious, sugar, you're my daughter, aren't you? Isn't a mother entitled to spoil her girl from time to time?" "Your mother's right," said Rona, giving me a warm, witch-like smile. "You deserve spoiling, and I'm sure that red dress is going to look fabulous on you." "Thank you," I said, grabbing the bag that Rona had handed me, and running away from the shop as fast as I possibly could. And from thenceforth I never went anywhere near the French chiffon boutique again. My shame was insufferable, and I didn't need reminding about what I'd done. Suffice to say, I never saw the kind woman again, the angel of light that saved me from a bleak moment. But the red dress in my purse I threw to the back of my cupboard in disgust, and never wore it, for this treacherous dress had bewitched me, stolen my morals away, under its beguiling spell. If I ever wore it, I would be reminded of my iniquity. 18 months later. "How long will it be until we get to your parents' holiday cabin?" I asked curiously, as I stared out of the passenger side window. It was a pity it was so dark outside, as my boyfriend's red Jeep Wrangler ambled relatively smoothly over the remote country roads, with only the occasional jerky bump here and there. The roads were hemmed in occasionally with large clusters of trees, from spruces and hemlocks, the pine forests, and the occasional hardwood trees. At this time of night, there was only a faint trajectory of pearly moonlight that was inauspiciously hiding behind some foggy cloud cover. It was difficult to see much apart from the blurry silhouettes of the lofty trees on the side of the road, along with the undulating rocky crevices of the mountainous landscape. Luckily, the lights of my boyfriend's headlights blasted through the tenebrific inky veil, making the road seem a little less intimidating. Even so, I wished we had driven earlier during the daylight hours, as the drive had been only under 2 hours, but we now needed to find our way to his parents' cabin in time for dinner. Luckily, Dennis was undaunted by the dark, and appeared to know exactly where he was going, as he'd come here so many times before. Good for him, I thought privately to myself, for if I were in the driver's seat, even with a working GPS, I'd have been rarely anxious driving down these long, windy, rugged roads, where occasionally white-tailed deers would spring out of nowhere into the road, and we had already seen the silhouette of a black bear scooting through the trees and vanishing from our sight. We were heading to an area close to the town of Long Lake, in the Adirondack Mountain, in northeastern New York State, in Hamilton County, which is in summer popular as a tourist destination, where people enjoy hikes, boating, and so many other exciting outdoor pursuits. The Adirondack Mountains are only sparsely settled, and much of the area exists in its primitive natural state, protected by state law. Dennis told me his parents owned their own cabin there, called the Otter's Den. It overlooked spectacular views onto a silvery lake.
I was nervous about meeting Dennis's parents because Dennis had won over my heart. And even though I was about 24.5 years old, I knew I'd met my soulmate. And let's just say it was crucial to me that I didn't mess up this first-time introduction with his parents, as the way things were going with our relationship, meandering smoothly down its course, there was a strong likelihood that my boyfriend's parents might soon become my in-laws. It was important to make a good impression on them. It was painstaking even to decide what to wear for dinner on a spring night in a country cabin overlooking a chilly lake. I could not be dressed too smart, but I didn't want to be casual either. It was important to make that first impression. In the end, I settled for a smart pair of white pants, some flat sneakers, and a pale pink cashmere jumper. Dennis was laughing at me.
"Look at you, Gemma. You're so nervous," he said, reaching out to give me a nudge. "My parents are amazing people. My mother's fabulous. They'll love you. I know they will. You don't need to stand on ceremony with them."
"But what if they don't like me?"
"Not like you? How could anyone not like you? They would be mad not to like you."
Even though the night was an inky black colour, my boyfriend's Jeep Wrangler was soon parked outside a beautiful cabin. From what I could see, it looked spectacular. It was situated amidst the trees, overlooking, I imagine, very prepossessing views onto a sparkling lake, which at this time of the night shimmered under the moon on its reflectant surfaces. Beyond that, I couldn't see very much, but the light of the cabin in the upper and lower elevations was warm and welcoming. I could see a figure or silhouette standing outside an upper balcony and then disappearing into the cabin as feet descended a staircase and the front door finally opened. A woman was standing there, but I couldn't see her very clearly because she had enveloped her son in her arms.
"Oh, Dennis! Oh, darling, it is so good to see you. I'm so glad you've come for the weekend. And who is this you have with you?" she said, her eyes turning around to examine me. "This, Mum, this is Gemma. She's my girlfriend. I've told you a lot about her." "Oh, how wonderful to meet you, Gemma," said the woman, throwing her arms around me. She beckoned for us to come into the sumptuously cosy yellow pine cabin that was luxuriously appointed. Dennis's parents both greeted me warmly, and before long we were being directed into a dining room where a crackling fire was burning away happily in the hearth, in a sizable fireplace with a marble mantel. A fabulous spread had been laid out that was fit enough for a king. There were cold cuts, piping hot melt-in-the-mouth macaroni cheese, salads, garlic bread, crispy potato wedges, and piping hot spare ribs. We were encouraged to help ourselves, as large bowls of Greek salad were passed around generously, and we were persuaded to eat the sticky ribs with our hands. "Ribs absolutely must be eaten with your hands, sugar," said Dennis's mother to me. "The whole idea is to get all that sticky sauce over your face," she chuckled. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something about this woman was hauntingly familiar, and her honeyed voice I'd heard at some time before. I studied her curiously, trying to rack my brains as to how our paths might have crossed. She was a slender woman in her 40s, with a small pretty face, boasting a pixie haircut. She was elegantly dressed in a black cotton ensemble, with a matching woolly jacket and a pair of boots. Dennis's father was as quiet as a church mouse. He looked like an accomplished, successful man who had achieved much in his life, but he spoke very little. He had kind, warm brown eyes and a sprinkling of grey hair, but he was a handsome man with a square jawline and a warm smile, but a talker he was not. "So tell us about yourself, Gemma," said Dennis's mother, ladling some salad onto her plate and studying me through humorous eyes. "My son here has not been able to stop talking about you. You've made quite an impression on him. Tell me, how did the two of you meet? I do love a romantic story." "Well, I was working at a restaurant owned by my friend's father. Her name is Bree Cunningham-Barker." "Oh, I know Bree very well. What a small world this is," said Dennis's mother, who insisted I called her Von. "Such a lovely girl. So let me guess, you were introduced to each other through Bree, is that right?" "Well, yes. You see, Dennis came to the restaurant for dinner with a couple of his friends, and Bree served them.
And at the end of the evening she called me over and introduced me to her friends. And when I met your son, we clicked at once. We've been dating ever since."
"Oh, what a wonderful way to meet," said Von. "That's how it was when I was young. Me and George met on a karaoke evening in a bar in downtown Manhattan. So much better than just meeting someone on a dating site, don't you think? But then I am an old-fashioned girl, and I like doing things the old-fashioned way. Nowadays, everybody has a different way of doing things, which doesn't really, tick my boxes."
"Well, it was a great way to meet, I have to admit."
"I've never been happier, Mum," said Dennis proudly. "Gemma's been the rainbow that has entered my life. Things are so much brighter these days because of her."
"I can see, son. You're positively glowing," said his mother approvingly. "I've never seen you like this before."
"That was delicious, Yvonne," said Dennis's father. "I, for one, am looking forward to some of that apple pie you baked. Believe me, Gemma, when I say that my wife can make a good apple pie, I'm not joking. That's the reason I married her. I always said if I met a woman who could make a good apple pie, that would be my wife. And after I met her on that karaoke evening, I came over to dinner one night, and she served me up this apple pie, and I said, 'That's it. This is the woman I'm going to marry.'"
"Oh, isn't my husband ridiculous? But I will tell you, he did tell me that the apple pie, well, that clinched the deal for him. He then popped the question 1 week later, would you believe it? We only went out for it must have been about 2 weeks, and then we were engaged. And we've never looked back, I have to say. When you know, you know." It was when Dennis's father called his wife Yvonne, my blood went cold. I realized that the woman who'd asked me to call her Von was in fact the very woman whom had covered for me at the French chiffon boutique and purchased the red dress for me, pretending to be my mother. She looked different now, as her long hair had been cut into a cute pixie style. It gave her a very different look, but I now knew unequivocally that this was the very same woman who had rescued me from my nightmare. She knew I was a thief, and if she recognized me, a woman like her would never ever want me to be with her son. Suddenly my cheeks burned bright red, my skin paled, sweat broke out on my forehead and above my lips. I felt as if I wanted to throw up. "Excuse me," I said, feigning that I was going to the bathroom to answer a call of nature. If she knew who I was, she would tell her son I was a good-for-nothing thief who had stolen a dress in a boutique, and furthermore she'd witnessed the whole thing with her very eyes. The secret shame that had laid buried had now come back to haunt me like the proverbial boomerang. My blood was freezing at this point, as the bitter taste of bile secreted itself unapologetically into the back of my throat. I was eager to hurl up the contents of my stomach. "Of course, Gemma, be my guest," said Yvonne. "It's the first door to the left." I stood up from my chair, my knees almost buckling beneath me, as I hurried out of the door. I heard Yvonne saying, "Is she all right, Dennis? Do you need to go after her? She looked awfully pale to me." "Leave her be," said Dennis. "She was awfully nervous about meeting the two of you. I think she just needs a bit of a breather. Give her some space." "Bless her," I could hear Yvonne saying. "She doesn't need to be nervous of us." "I know, I told her. But she did want to make a good impression on you. And nerves, they can sometimes get the better of you, can't they?" I've never had a panic attack before, but my chest tightened, squeezing all the air out of me. And instead of making my way to the bathroom, I found myself desperately running through the living room, out of the sliding doors onto the deck of the porch and down the stairs, until my feet met the ground. How grateful I was for them to meet the ground. It was a relief to be out of the cabin, away from the curious stares of Dennis's parents. As it was early spring, a cool breeze punnelled against my skin. The sky had become a smouldering grey colour as I ran through the trees towards the lake. Thankfully the moon that earlier on in the evening had hidden behind some cloud cover had now made a reappearance, and its pearly luminescence sprinkled itself across the lake, so that under the dark canopy it shimmered. The moon reflected itself on the surface, along with some of the lofty trees, although they were like blobs of black. Moments later I was standing over a bush, coughing and spluttering, hurling up the contents of my stomach over everything. I vomited and vomited, my tight stomach clenched and contracted. The bitter taste in my throat was like gall. I felt moderately better, but then the anxiety gripped me again like a heavy hand, and everything around me began to spin and spin. Then I must have passed out and fainted, as everything went black, as I was out cold. I could not have been out of consciousness for terribly long, but I can't be sure. But when I opened my eyes, I saw this dark, shadowy silhouette hovering over me, looking at me through concerned brown eyes, and appeared to be slapping my face to wake me up. In that moment, I thought I'd entered a parallel universe, as the creature standing over me, with a matriarch kind of concern, was a Bigfoot. In that moment, I forgot my angst and all thoughts of the red dress that I'd stolen 18 months ago. All that just sailed away, as in this bizarre moment in time, a tear in the fabric of our world, I was seeing something that really should not be here. I rubbed my eyes as they skimmed over the creature in bemusement. Was this really happening to me? Was this creature even real? I rubbed my eyes harder, and the creature seemed amused, and she said something to me in a strange language, which I immediately understood. Golina, bokola, sifakashina. Don't be surprised. Of course I'm real. The Bigfoot must have read my thoughts. How did she even do that? How could she do that? Kolasa, are you all right? She asked me. Kolatika, hoposashina, vazilako, zantali. Your energy is tangled up. It's such a mess. Knots everywhere, absolutely everywhere. What are you so afraid of? You passed out for quite a time. I was slapping your face to revive you. I've never seen such tense energy before. Energy like this can kill. You need to let it go. It's wrapping itself around you like a snake, squeezing the life out of you. That's why you fainted. Fear is a killer. And why do your kind do it all the time? So much red energy among your people. The energy of fear. It kills. Kilatitwa, sokani kilani, hoposatikwa. I pointed to the cabin. I did something bad, I said, a while ago. I'm scared the lady in there is going to find out about it. And when she does, she'll never allow me anywhere near her son. And I really love her son. The Bigfoot considered my words for a moment. She scratched her head thoughtfully, and then patted me on the back. Kolapi, nitakwisana, holata. Worry is overrated. Face the storm, and the sun will rise. The Bigfoot took her large hand in mine and guided me to my feet, and on staggering legs, she led me back to the cabin, instinctively realizing that that was where I was meant to be. She was so kind, so caring, so considerate, and never once did she frighten me, despite her gargantuan, very intimidating size. I couldn't see her very clearly, but I would guess she was 9 foot tall. She definitely had a human face, and the most beautiful eyes I have ever beheld. When something like that crosses your life path so fleetingly, it's easy to ask yourself, did that really happen? But I want to assure you, it did. Once I climbed up on the steps of the wraparound porch, the Bigfoot nodded at me and whispered, Dila kikwa, good luck. And then she disappeared through the trees. I was on the wraparound porch when Yvonne peered through the open door. Oh, there you are, Gemma. I was so worried about you. You looked so pale. I was looking for you. I see you've gone out to have a bit of fresh air. I was wondering if you'd like to help me with the dessert. I need someone to help me slice the apple pie. I followed Yvonne into the kitchen, and as she began plating up the ice cream onto plates, she looked at me and said, It's lovely to see you again, Gemma. I hoped our paths would cross one day. Did you get to wear the lovely red dress? Tears began to spill down my cheeks. Yvonne had remembered me. Whatever is the matter? Said Yvonne, wrapping her arms around me tenderly, as I sobbed into her chest. Did I say something? I'm so ashamed of what I did at the French chiffon. I don't know what overcame me.
Why I stole that red dress. I'm so grateful you rescued me. Surely you don't want me anywhere near your son, now that you know I'm a thief."
Yvonne laughed.
Is that what this is all about? You are funny, Gemma. A thief? You're not a thief. We've all done things we regret. I'm sure most people have stolen something at one point in their time. I saw what a hold that red dress had on you. In a moment of impulse you did something you regretted, but that does not define who you are. Let me tell you something, Gemma. My son has never looked happier than he is with you. So don't allow that little red dress to steal any more of your joy, or to destroy what you two have together. I've already forgotten all about it.
All these years later, I'm happily married to my husband Dennis. We have 2 children, and my husband's mother Yvonne has become one of my very best friends, along with Bree Cunningham Barker. How lucky I was to meet 2 of the kindest people I have ever known. Some things never change, of course. My sister still believes she's top dog in our family, but my parents don't believe I'm a dreadful mess anymore, which is a good thing. I did sell my clapped-out car and resolved my issues with money, but one thing I've never forgotten is my brief encounter with a female Bigfoot, another great kindness that was bestowed on me. Sometimes I really do second-guess myself and ask myself, did I imagine that? But I assure you, I did not. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Don't forget to leave a comment. I do love hearing from you. Until next time, goodbye and good night.